Let's go. Let's go. I am CoachColin.com. www.IamCoachColin.com. That is where you get all of your soul not for sale clothing. I got a whole bunch of it. And this weekend, me and my wife are going to be pursuing new designs and just stepping up the website a little bit. So expect that by Monday. Right now it's Saturday. And I'm just kicking off an episode of Joe Rogan and Russell Brand talking about the fact that the powers that be like to take advantage of crisis. They take advantage of it, and that's how they get, great example, the Restrict Act. TikTok was exposed for having all sorts of wild terms and conditions in terms of what they surveil and what they can look at in your phone. And, it was taken advantage of. They brought about the Restrict Act. They branded it as the TikTok bill. It had nothing to do with TikTok and everything with suppressing people or oppressing people more and more. So we're about to listen to that. Russell Brand, Joe Rogan. Let's get into it.
In these grand orchestrated conspiracies as much as I believe in people taking advantage of an opportunity in a moment, and that there's a very clear pattern of them doing that forever.
Yeah. Opportunistic seems easier to explain, and it is also in alignment with the way that we understand that model, that it exploits opportunity to advance itself. I feel like that the credibility took its biggest hit in 2008 when the banks were bailed out, when ordinary people suffered at a point when it was clear that the economic model couldn't function anymore and needed radical revision, and it was kept alive. And like these, and what happened, I feel like, is that the liberal establishment ceded that territory and meant that now the only anti-establishment rhetoric is coming out of Breitbart and Bannon and Trump, and like they're the only people that are attacking the establishment and the authoritarianism that's coming out there and the exploitation. There's no voices, and the voices on the left have become kind of muted. It feels to me that during the 2016 election that they would rather have Trump win than have the Democrats win under Bernie Sanders. They made a bunch of like odd decisions that shows you that that Hicks's metaphor stays ultimately true. And in a way, doesn't it make sense that if you want to maintain that, the number one thing you have to prevent is a broad alliance and a willingness of people to accept their differences. As long as you've got people willing to kill each other, whether it's online or in person, over cultural values, rather than I'm willing to accept that that's how you live, as long as you accept that's how I live. Then it's over.
As long as you can keep people at each other's throats, then you can continue to manipulate them. Then it's an easy chess game. As soon as people come together and they realize, like, hey, we have way more in common than we do difference. What do we really want? Everyone wants a safe neighborhood. You want good education. You want healthy food. You want people to be able to pursue their dreams. You want people to have a good time. And the more people you're around that have a good time, the better the quality of your life is going to be as well. The better the quality of life in your entire neighborhood. And if you have this mentality of great fortune and not a famine mentality, not have this mentality that all the success has to come to me and all these other people can go fuck themselves and it's a dog-eat-dog world. If instead you go, wouldn't it be better if we all just did our best to work together as a community and just accept people for their differences and recognize that most of these differences are kind of bullshit. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't give a fuck what music you like, what movies you enjoy, or how you like to dress. I don't care. No. I want you to be happy. If you like to wear pink all day and you like to put braids in your hair, good. Who cares? Who gives a fuck? I don't care. And if you think about your own life and your own pursuit of happiness and your own interests and concentrate on that more than you do stopping people from behaving in a way that you're ideologically opposed to. And that ideology, you've probably been manipulated in some way, shape, or form. You've probably fallen into some fucking Rachel Maddow narrative or some Bill O'Reilly narrative, and you're just like at the throats of the people that are different than you, because somehow or another diminishing them you think is going to empower you. And that's the weirdness of it all.
I think you're right that we become parasited.
Very, very true, spoken by Joe Rogan. It makes me think of something that David Goggins talks about. He talks about the other, and it makes me think of how we always other people, and we get comfort from that. We've noticed that in the past 3 years. It's the more that you have an enemy to point at together, like if we all just have this enemy to point at together, we get to feel like a tribe, we get to feel fellowship, we get to feel pride, we get to feel like we're on the right side of things and they're on the wrong side of things and they're morons, and we have to show them the way. The more you can have that feeling, that's people will always be separated, right? Because think about, like, I just explained that whole side of things, and then there's the other side, and they're just like, oh, well, they think we're idiots, they think we're dumb, they think we're conspiracy theorists, we think we're this, we think we're that. Well, screw those guys. Yeah, you know what? In fact, we're going to show them that we're right. And it's this constant thing that's going on between people that really needs to stop. Because like Joe said, if you really looked at the differences, like you'd notice that there's not as many as you think. Like if you were locked up, like let's say you're a hard right person. I'm not going to say far right because that's not really a thing. But like you just have your conservative values, and you were with someone that had like extreme, like not I shouldn't even say extreme. They just have liberal values, and you guys were locked in a room together. And on top of that, you guys had to in order to live, you know, in this room together, pretty big room, but you had to like get along. You just had to get along. You have no choice but to get along. You'd connect. You'd find common ground. If that was the only person that you had around, you would find common ground. You'd figure it out together, you know? But when we have a chance to separate with the other side, like when we have a chance to like jump into our tribe and that person jumps into their tribe, well, it's like, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you anymore. So screw you. And in fact, I didn't like you the whole time we were in that room. How about that? And they're like, I didn't like you either. But it's a nonsensical thing that keeps happening, and to keep people at each other's throats. And I've talked about this so many times. I wish we would just all look at the actual enemy and be like, you're the problem. And you know what? You're not even the enemy. You're just doing things wrong, and it's not in our interest. And we don't want you to be doing this anymore. Like, stop. You know, but it'll never stop because we are the fuel to it all. You know, and when we talk about, you know, let's just say the powers that be, we're the one fueling what they do. We fuel it with our tribalism. We fuel it with our jumping on one side or the other when it comes to a two-party system. We fuel it. We're the fuel. I always say that the people, the working class people in this country, everybody who's not like a super elite person, we're the lifeblood of every country. Every country, that's the lifeblood of the country. If that group of people, if that huge mass of people decides I'm not doing this anymore, everything grinds to a halt. It'd be the worst thing ever for anybody who's elite in higher positions of power. Worst things ever. You know? Like if everybody in a Microsoft warehouse or Nike warehouse decided I'm not doing anything, everybody at the top would be like, oh no, what happened? Oh my gosh, how do we fix this? But that can only happen if we all come together. Like in that scenario, if everybody in the warehouse comes together, then they have that power. But the power will always be taken away from us as long as we focus on the differences, you know? Focusing too much on the differences. But I just like that clip. I like that clip of Rogan and Brand talking. I wish those two had a podcast together. I think it would be a pretty sick podcast if they just sat down every week and just talked about some issues. I think it'd be pretty great. But neither of them want to do that. So I figured I'd just bring you guys that clip. But what do you think? Do you think that there's actual, you know, when it comes to somebody, you know, not letting any crisis go to waste? Like, do you think there's actually people that do that, or do you think it's highly orchestrated? I think it's a little bit of both. I think there are some things that are orchestrated and planned, but I also think that there's some keen eyes that watch to see what's going on and they jump on that. Like, I really do think like BLM jumped on that whole experience. Like, they jumped on it and they were like, we're gonna cash in on this thing. And they did, to the tunes of like, I think hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, I think there's people like that as well. I think there's people that plan. I think there's people that jump on crisis and they really capitalize on it. I think it's a little bit of both. What do you think? Let's get into it in the comment section. Other than that, I am out.